Okay, breaking news. In the next 3 minutes of this podcast, which you should definitely not skip, there's a point where I say 10% off. That's not true. It's actually 20% off. Our partner, Swag Up, has got an incredible deal for you if you place an order before December this year. So, don't skip the next 3 minutes. It's important if you're placing an order for swag and you've not used Swag Up before. They're incredible. You should do it. This is a great deal. If you've used Swag Up before, you already know it's awesome. You've already placed order for swag. Ooh, not great because you could have saved 20%. And otherwise, yeah, skip ahead and enjoy the show. Hey, my name is Martin Hauck, and you're listening to From a People Perspective. It's a podcast for HR, recruitment, and operations professionals. If you're looking for a little bit more, you can check out the community at thepeoplegroup.com. If you're a business owner, or if you're an HR person or a recruiter and you need a little bit of extra support, we've also got a fractional consultancy called Purple Umbrella. You can check us out at purpleumbrella.co. Before diving into today's episode, I wanted to talk to you about swag. I know you love swag. I love swag, but the process of getting swag is not always the most fun. Thankfully, swagup.com exists. Their slogan is literally swag made simple. Oftentimes, slogans and the delivery don't always match, but this is one that I can say for certain does, having used it ourselves for the People group. All of our TPPG Plus members get some swag from swagup.com, and the process of managing all of that is seamless. It's crazy simple, and it's been an amazing feature for us as a small company, and I've seen it stand out for massive organizations as well. We got a lot of folks from within the community that have said nothing but great things about Swag Up. So if you're in the market for getting swag for your new employees, or if you're looking for creative ways to dazzle your clients or prospects or customers, check out swagup.com. And if you go to swagup.com/TPPG, you can get yourself a 10% discount on swag. What's not to love? Check them out. You're like, how long is this gonna be? I don't want to be here for very long.
Not that I don't want to be. I'm like, how much do I need to milk my milk the interesting things that I have to say? I'm like, I've got.
I once did a 3-hour podcast with someone, and I think that's a bit steep. Unless you've got 3 hours worth of stuff to talk about. I do have to pick up my daughter at 2 hours.
At 2 hours. Okay.
We got 2 hours if we want.
Great. Lots of time. Did you already do your spa day, or is that tomorrow?
Spa day is tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was inspired by your spa day and did a spa day on a weekend this past weekend. I was on a climbing trip with a bunch of people.
You just did a spa day while you were climbing?
We back at the Airbnb, we did a little spa day.
Tell me about this.
I've got a portable wood-fired sauna that it's like 6 people. It's like a ice fishing tent kind of, but that fits a wood stove.
A portable sauna.
It's the best thing.
Okay.
And so we had that set up and made some homemade like rubs and scrubs for exfoliators. Got face masks and chilled cucumbers, and had a real DIY spa evening.
And that was inspired by legitimately just me saying like, oh hey, we got to move the podcast because Friday my daughter's having a spa day at home because school wants to be closed.
Yeah, and I was like, well, spa day at home, great idea.
Here we are.
What
was the best part? Yeah. I feel like your hat is different. You have a different colored hat.
From what color?
As a result of the spa day, probably.
Hey, you know what? I got this hat from Disrupt HR.
No way.
Yeah. It's a good hat. It's like the best swag hat I've ever gotten.
You're wearing it. Kudos, Disrupt.
Way to go, disrupt Kitchener-Waterloo. And
Disrupted Michaud's hat game for a little bit.
yeah. Now I'm on mustard yellow. Often, often I rock pink.
Yeah, which is a good segue into what you've been doing a little bit lately, and we're going to bounce around a little bit today here, folks, because we've
Cool.
done so many really structured podcasts as of late. It's just nice to kind of fly a little bit looser with Michaud. So, Michaud, why don't you introduce yourself?
I feel like a little bit looser with Michaud could be the name of my own podcast.
That's fair. Okay. I mean, yeah, there you go. Another inspirational moment. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
that's great. You're just giving me gifts left, right, and center. First
Cool.
the spa, now the podcast. It's thank you. Thank you. Me, introduce myself. My name is Michaud Garneau. I'm the founder of Weird is Normal. Weird is Normal started off as a leadership development company and is now shifting into doing more public speaking, presentation skills, sort of like embracing you and letting the world see who you are so that people listen to what you have to say more.
I find this a very fascinating topic. I did a podcast in Toronto, the video podcast with, oh my days, Mark Bowden.
Oh yeah. The power.
Truth Plane.
Yes. Oh yeah, our truth planes aren't visible right now.
They're not. Yeah, I can't. I have to do this. I have to just talk with my hands in front of my face.
We talk about T-Rex arms as a
Yes.
way of yeah.
Yes. I love it. I love it. This is exactly what we needed in terms of an unstructured podcast. Arms. This is a good podcast for like a Friday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Or a Thursday.
Or yeah, maybe.
Either.
Whatever day people want to listen to it on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing right now. And I am remembering when you and I connected for the first time. You sent me an interesting LinkedIn message, and I almost want to find it. And
wow. I would love if
Can we do that, or is that like just make you cringe? Because
no, not cringe.
We talk as though we know each other quite well, and I think we do, but it's not like we're besties from like 100 years ago.
No, I think that was when you were at CoinSquare.
I just sent you a link. So 2019, and you say, "Hey, I met your colleague at Disrupt HR." Full circle. And then we send some gifts back and forth, and then we grabbed coffee, I think. And I was just so intrigued by Weird is Normal, because that's what you were running with at that time as well, because you had another thing, Calmswell, as well.
Calmswell was a brief blip in the I guess maybe we tried to get that up and running for like 6 or 7 months or something.
Yeah.
It was not successful,
as many things are when you're an entrepreneur.
It didn't really get to the launch phase. It got to the probably going to launch phase.
Yeah. Let's go back further, because you've got some really interesting stories. What's your first real job?
Oh Lord, what does real mean?
We're gonna get to this 2-hour mark. Trust me.
Real, declared on my taxes?
No. If you don't want to talk about this, then that's fine.
I guess my probably the first. for sure, this would have been the first things where I was making money. Making balloon animals.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, my brother worked at a magic store,
What?
and yeah, older brother.
Okay.
So yeah, he was probably like 16, which would have put me around 12.
What a cool
And
job, just in general.
cool job,
My brother works at a magic store.
party magics.
Ultimately, like, social status is just skyrocketing.
Oh yeah, so cool.
I thought in my books.
Really? Well,
Yes.
I sort of felt like it goes a bit into the nerd category, which maybe now there's more
Yeah.
clout. Uh,
Mhm.
I-
Magic's respected because if you can do a magic trick, that's not nerdy.
isn't it?
So many magicians feel attacked right now. It's just like,
I mean, it's just, I mean, it is nerdy because of the amount of practice that is required to be able to execute on a trick well is endless. Like Andre, my brother, and I would sit in the basement and watch these VHS tapes of how to do like close up like card or coin magic, and you're just practicing flipping a card over for 3 hours, and you're trying to make it as like slick as possible and as natural, which is funny, like to spend 3 hours really trying to make something look natural.
yeah.
Like so contrived, and then
It's not, it's the opposite of natural because it would never happen that way normally.
yeah,
Weird as normal. There you go.
weird as normal. That'll be our beat.
You're paying me to say this, so.
I am, yeah. 10 cents per mention.
You e-transfer me that 10 cents.
Yeah, each one's an individual e-transfer too.
If there's no reason not to at this point, apart from like you have better things to do.
Yeah, but now that might be the best thing that I could do, is just knowing that you'll get all of these. Do you have direct deposit set up?
No, I have to approve it.
Oh yeah, even better then.
Oh, fuck. That would be like, hey, we did this podcast episode. I could see it now. I could just have like a screenshot of all the like e-transfer notifications from you. $1.60 because it's like $1.50 to send an e-transfer now. Anyways.
Yeah.
So who's paying for that? Are you paying for the $1.50?
I'd be paying $1.50 for every 10 cents I send you.
So it's not actually 10 cents. It's $1.60.
It's $1.60 out of me. You're still benefiting the 10 cents. Yeah, but it costs me $1.60 per mention. Yeah.
Weird as normal. Weird as normal. Weird as normal.
No! End of the podcast. Weird as Normal has officially declared bankruptcy today.
So, magic shop.
Oh yeah.
Are you good at magic?
I'd say I'm mid. I'd say what I'm good at is the performing side and the like. I'm gonna misdirect you and tell a big story about the things that's happening, which is definitely part of it. And then card tricks. I can do card tricks that blow people's minds. Yeah, but
that's cool.
Insofar as like having seen people who are like really, really good, I am not that. I can just get people to not look at my hands while I do magic.
You're humble, but you're good.
I'm distracting, I think. Maybe is what I am.
It's the yellow hat. It's the mustard yellow hat.
Draw the eyes up here, then my hands can do anything.
Anything they want. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like doing tricks. No, but the thing that I was good at, Andre was the magician,
Hmm.
But then we'd get these corporate gigs to go and be like entertainment, but they would need a balloon artist. And
You're a corporate balloon artist under 16?
yo, yeah,
Okay. Tell me
yeah.
more.
Well, so Andre and his boss would get these gigs to go and do magic shows, but they needed a balloon artist. And so one day Andre came home with like a bag of balloons, a pump, and a book, and said, if you can learn how to do these things, then you can start coming with us to these shows, these performances, I guess you would call them. And so then I got to practicing and practiced a lot, which some people might say I'm a little bit obsessive, and then got to the point where I could make them, and then started going and doing these like corporate parties where they would have this magic show, and I'd sort of warm people up as they come in and like be making balloon animals for them and their kids, and did a few of those. And I remember we did an event at Ontario Place one time,
That's a big
and
deal.
that was a big deal. Yeah, I thought that was a huge that was the biggest deal for me. And I actually ended up doing balloon animals for income. One of many. I've had quite a few jobs, but stuck with doing balloon animals for income through till I was like 20 or so. It was like a street busker. Okay. Um, yeah.
That is. So, what do you avoid it at all costs now, or is it?
No, I'd love to do it. No, if you give me a balloon, yeah, I can make like a bear juggling 5 balls riding a unicycle out of one balloon.
So how did you learn how to make these?
Well, there was this book that my brother gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't pre-internet. Couldn't have been pre-internet, but definitely pre like anything you could ever need to know was on the internet times.
You
And
say that there's a book for that. I guess, right? They had to do so the internet was books before it was the internet, basically.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I learned from books, and then
Learned from the greats.
yeah, and then sometimes you're out at a festival and you see these people making these things, and it's like, whoa, hey, how do you do that? And learned some of that from them. And then as I was older, like I helped this guy Sean Rooney, who makes these really elaborate, massive balloon sculptures. Helped him make a big installation that went up on the Drake Hotel for Nuit Blanche one year, a million years ago, and learned through him how to make sort of multi balloon structures.
I wonder if that was the Nuit Blanche where I ate half a chocolate edible bar. That was the worst.
Yeah, that sounds overwhelming.
That was the worst Nuit Blanche ever.
Yeah, Nuit Green, more like
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, not a good time.
What'd you end up doing?
Crying.
Really?
Yeah, no, it was bad. It was rough. Um, just didn't feel well. Went home, woke up at like 3 in the morning, tried to calm myself down, and then watched some show on Netflix. And it was just like um, one of those shows where they're like really big on food. I forget the name of it. The Masterclass, not the Top Chef Canada shows, but the one where they like glamorize the making of food. And
Oh, okay, yeah.
it was one where they were just talking to this person who's a butcher, and it was just like all this just they were in this like butcher shop, and I was just like, I cannot deal with any of this right now. My brain is just thinking about all these things. It was yeah.
It,
So I wonder if I had walked by your like balloon sculpture on the Drake Hotel, because I know that was the general area.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if the balloons brought me peace for a slight moment.
I don't know. They were quite scary. Like it was like a big, giant, sort of scary looking clown thing with these large hands protruding from the building, and
That would not have been a good time.
I
No,
don't think it would have been. Yeah. No.
it kicked it
No.
off.
That it strikes me that that maybe would have given you that would have exacerbated the issues that you were having.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you go from balloons, doing that from like 12 to 20?
Yeah. I mean, I did other things
No, of course.
in there.
That's a very interesting first gig. Um, and then, to my recollection, which is extremely poor, uh, you go from balloons to the circus.
In a way.
So help me patch that together properly.
Um, I I would say like circus adjacent. Um,
Okay.
like like I was never good enough to be in the circus. Like one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me was thinking that I was good enough to be in the circus and driving to Quebec City to go and audition for the Quebec Circus School,
Yeah.
and realizing upon arrival just how good everybody that was there was and how bad I was. And I had to go through 8 hours of hell just doing these, like, they want you to do physical tests and dance tests and get on the trampoline. I grew up with a trampoline, but I also grew up in a small town where nobody was good at anything. And so because I could do a backflip, I thought I was like the best trampolinist in the world.
So you could do balloons and backflips on the trampoline.
Yeah, I could walk on a tightrope, I could spin fire, I do things.
Coolest kid in town, again. And you're going to disagree with me.
No, I had some swag. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was the coolest kid in town, but in a small town where like nobody really did anything. And so I had this idea that I was way better at things than I actually was.
How'd that? So you're at this Quebec School of Circusry? not a.
Yeah, École de Cirque de
Okay.
Québec or something, you know?
And that is terrible because you're just surrounded by professionals, people that are.
Yeah, I go in thinking I'm amazing because my
Oy.
whole life everyone's told me I'm amazing because I've never competed against anyone who's actually good at anything. And I get there, we're supposed to have a performance ready. And I'm like, oh, whatever. I'll like play part of a song and like spin these fire poi around. Whenever I do that in Georgetown, everyone thinks I'm awesome. These people are also going to think I'm awesome. And I get there and I just see all these people who are like the fittest people you've ever seen in your life. And they're doing, like Olympic level tricks on the trampolines. And I'm like, oh no, what have I done? And I go into some of the tests, the like dancing one, and I'm like, man, these people are so good. I couldn't do anything, and it all felt pretty terrible, but nothing quite as terrible as when it got around to the point where I was going to have to do this show, this presentation. And I watched a couple people before me, and from the very first minute of that first person, for the first second, I was like, this is going to go so terribly for me because they had full story arcs, costumes, props were good. And
Talent.
talent. They had talent. I had hubris. And I just remember looking for an exit and hoping I could slink away. But was like, no, Misho, you have to follow through on this thing. And like, I didn't even have a song picked out.
Is that the hubris talking, or is that like a weird perseverance? Like, like which voice is that?
Combo voice where I'm like, oh, Misho, go and try the hard thing.
Yeah.
But like, don't do the work to be actually good at the hard thing. Just like throw yourself under the bus in this awful. and so they call my name and I'm like, oh fuck, I have to do it now.
Yep.
And I go on stage and all I have, so obviously you can't do you know what fire poi are? It's like fireballs on chains that you like spin around.
Okay, yeah.
And so I had those, but like you can't set them on fire inside.
No?
That's what they said. And so then effectively all I had was like charred balls on a chain to spin around to no music.
No music.
I hadn't prepared at all. And I wasn't very good. And at the last minute, I just threw on a Daft Punk like song from their 2007 Alive album and spun fire poi around until I couldn't bear to do it anymore.
Oh God.
And then stopped and walked over and stopped the music from playing. And then walked out of the building.
You're just like, I'm gonna leave now. I'm not waiting for the report card. I'm not waiting for the assessments. Why didn't you just leave?
I couldn't look anybody in the eye.
That's fair. Oh my God. Did anyone stop you?
No, definitely not.
They're like, they just like, oh, okay. That's wild.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. That's a hard day.
It was a really hard day. Also, I shit my pants driving there to get to the audition, which like literally.
Okay.
Which just thinking about how the journey started really set the tone for how it was going to end.
The optimist in me is like, well, it can't get worse than this. It's all uphill from here.
Yeah, got worse. Yeah, it was that. I mean, so that was like a real low point for me. It was at that point, actually. It was the first point I realized that there are people in the world who are good at things and that they try really hard to be good at them. And that if I wanted to be good at anything, that I would have to also try really hard.
Did you learn that lesson in that moment? And it just became clear from then on? Or was it more of like a slow burn of a realization that like over time you kind of keep going back to that moment and then like you're just it becomes almost motivation for you to, if you are going to do something, you better do it damn well kind of deal?
From that moment on, like it crystallized.
It's a switch.
Yeah. Switch. I was like, from now on, I'm a person who tries harder than, or at least as hard as the people who are good at things, and I will not think that I'm good at something unless I've like really worked really hard and put myself up against people who are also good at things.
Which is why potentially you were so humble about the magic tricks and the balloons. Because from my vantage point, you're an incredible balloon artist, I would imagine, because I can't make anything apart from like a link of sausages.
That's pretty good if they stay like that. They have a
Yeah, you
tendency
know
to
what?
come
I
from the
can't
twisted.
even do that. No, because it's just untangle.
Yeah.
Um, good call. Classic call out from a balloon expert. Classic.
Classic.
And so you've that crystallizes in that moment. And do
Mhm.
you know what you're? So how does adjacent happen? How does circus adjacent become?
Right, right.
It's like, you know what? I'm
That
never
was how
going back
circus
to the
proper
circus,
didn't happen.
but this is where I want to be to a degree in some form of entertainment and performance.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like a full shift for me where my whole life up until that point, the things that I did came fairly easy to me, or like, I was like smart, and so I got smart. I don't know. I did well in school without ever having to try, and got a lot of praise for things without having ever truly after having never applied myself to anything.
Hmm.
And after that experience, I was like, such a wake up call, where I was like, I need to try. And I went to go and do this thing, and I couldn't do it. I failed. I want to keep trying, and so I enrolled open enrollment at the Toronto Circus School.
You go
And
back.
so this is something that's a character either benefit or flaw, which is um, I can't let myself stop doing a thing until I decide that I'm good enough at it to be able to freely decide to not do it.
Resilience. That's
And
you say if I'd be interested. No, I won't go down that path. But that so you go back after that experience. Is this like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a year, 5 years?
oh no, almost immediately. It's like I get back to home, which was Georgetown at the time, and I was like, I need to get better at this thing. What's available? I can't
That's
get into
cool.
the things where I need to apply. Yeah. Yeah. And
That's what all
so
the TikToks in my entrepreneurial stream talk about.
just keep going.
Keep going, getting back,
Yeah.
consistency, not giving up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like ironically, I don't know, but like in a serious way, like that's the thing is persistence, keeping like you're being extremely vulnerable. Thank you. I appreciate it, but like I've always had an itch myself to just build something,
Mm,
and in terms of like the things that are the most successful of the things I've built, it's like there's the people group, which is from a community perspective, that's something I can look back and be like proud of and impressed of. But then there's
mm,
like 16 other things that I tried that were
mhm.
complete failures,
Yeah.
and I just kept going back. And that part fascinates me. It's just like you do have to keep. If you give up, then you're obviously not going to get better at the
Yeah.
thing you have like this innate desire to do. So right away, though, that's the part that's interesting. Is right away, there's no give up. Like there's no like mourning period, I suppose, or just like woe is me.
No, I think it just became really clear to me in that moment that I had never fucking tried at anything. And I was like, this is what I need. This is like the wake up call. Like if I want to be the type of person I want to be in the world, I have to work hard at things and try things and do things where I don't succeed and then keep doing them until I do.
Mm.
and like that is the type of person that I want to be in the world. And yeah, something about that experience and just how awful it was really, yeah, really crystallized that for me in yeah, in what feels like a really discreet way. Like, this thing happened, here's this change.
Yeah. It's, you mentioned earlier that people were always telling you that we're giving you praise.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening before you go through the Quebec experience. And so you've got this confidence in yourself. Would you wish that people gave you less praise in retrospect?
I think I wish that the praise that I got was aligned with the effort that I put in instead of the what felt like being praised for being good at things without trying.
Hmm. So, like, the balance of criticism or a balance of, like, hey, that's pretty good for where you're at right now, but by the way, there's versus like this, like sugarcoating it, so to speak, of like, you're the best in the, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, best ever. To like, admittedly, that happens with me and my daughter every once in a while, where I'll be like, she'll draw a picture, and like, nothing makes her feel more happy from what I can tell. It is just like the praise that she gets for like a good drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kid's drawing, and I'm biased as a parent, but so there's the question I got from myself based on this conversation is like, am I setting her up for a tough path forward, or a wake up call one day that I'm actually not helping her realize?
Yeah, I think it's like a really tricky balance between celebrating people for effort and what they do and that they're doing things and putting it out and building that sense of confidence while at the same time helping them know that, like, yes, it's good for where you're at right now.
Hmm.
And if you have that lens of where you're at right now and someone who, I think I was quite good at doing whatever, like slacklining and spinning fire and whatever, for somebody who didn't dedicate their whole life to it.
Hmm.
But people in the circus dedicate their whole lives to being good at those things.
Yeah,
And
like
so then
somebody's
when,
always practicing harder.
yeah, and to know, I think, where you sit in the context of other people and their dedication levels and their natural talents, I think is important, because we tend to use this binary of like, oh, you're good at that.
Yeah.
But good is so relative, and I think it can be really painful to think that you're, you know, to be told that you're really good at something and then meet people who are legitimately actually really good at it and be like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I turns out I suck.
I'm a hobbyist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you fill in the gap between Toronto circus school and it making sense to message folks like me and introducing yourself as Michaud, and I've got this company called Weird as Normal, Weird as Normal, Weird as Normal.
Fuck. Friggin' nice latte that just cost me.
Yeah. I had a decaf coffee, a small decaf coffee in Yorkville yesterday.
Yorkville.
Yeah. ask me. Apparently, inflation hit Yorkville too. Um, guess how much?
$30.
Okay. Wow. They're just being ridiculous now.
No. Okay, a small decaf, $8.
$7.56.
Come on.
Yeah. I was. My hand was shaking. It's like, oh, inflation hasn't stopped. Anyways, sorry. So,
That's wild. And not like a latte or anything.
no,
No, no
it
milk.
was black. A black decaf coffee.
That's wild.
I should have got milk and sugar just to offset some of the cost with some form of
Totally.
some form of value
Yeah,
because they're giving that. Can I get a straw? Can I get another straw? Can I get a handful of napkins? Can I get an extra cup?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just tell me I look good. Something.
Bolster me. Call me a show and say weird as normal 17 times.
Okay, just for the record, does it count if you say it as well, or
I think it has to. I think that was what. Yeah.
self-inflicted? Okay, so
I think
how would
there's-
you bridge that gap between?
Right. So I started doing that circus school stuff, which was way more like physical, sort of like tumbling silks, that kind of stuff. And also started getting into improv, like improv comedy. Did that for a while, which led me towards theatrical clown, um, which is its own sort of beast.
Is it a
Um,
genre of clown?
yeah, it's like I think sometimes people think clown and they think birthday party clown, and I think especially because I used to make balloon animals, they especially think birthday party clown. But the two things are quite separate. The idea with clown is that the clown acts as a mirror for the audience, and so the work of the clown is to kind of get clear on themselves and understand their own foibles or like the vulnerable parts of themselves, so that then they can show that back to the audience. The audience can see themselves in that vulnerability, and together you create a sense of catharsis
through the
through
performance,
through
the
the
entire
performer
theatrical
showing,
performance.
yeah, through the performer reflecting their vulnerability to you as the audience. You see your own vulnerability in that, and then collectively you get a sense of relief.
It's like relatable.
Yeah, and so the clown, it's not really like you don't always have a bit. You just like go out and try to pick up on what's happening in the audience, and feel what it is that they're feeling, and move it through yourself and reflect it back to them through your embodiment, through your emotions, so that they can see what they're feeling in you and then move through it. So say like something really tense maybe happened
Yeah.
in an act, and then the clown comes out. If the clown like acts really tense and then takes a big deep breath and relaxes, the audience can, in that moment of seeing their tense, the audience knows that that's also how they're feeling.
Like
And that,
taking cues,
yeah,
which is like if I look in a particular direction and look surprised, everybody else is going to look in that particular direction and look surprised, or at least look in that direction.
yeah, the idea with the clown would be like if you walk out and you notice everyone's looking in a direction and looking surprised, you'll also look in that direction and look surprised.
Hmm.
Or you'll go and walk over into that direction and wave to the people, something to like break or show that you notice what's happening in the with the audience.
And what do you? I mean, there's a million questions there, but that won't help us to get to that won't help us to get to LinkedIn and
Yeah.
sending random messages. But
Okay, so the main idea with clown is that all of the training that you had, clown doesn't have a fourth wall, and the fourth wall is the imaginary wall between the performer and the audience. And so
is the audience on stage essentially?
the audience is on stage. You're talking to them directly. You're like building something together instead of just being an actor on stage presenting something to someone.
Yeah, yeah,
So all of the training in clown is around like, how do you listen deeply to people to see what's going on for them? How do you invite them in to co-create this piece or this movement or whatever it is that you're creating? How do you keep them safe the whole time? And how do you make them look smart?
yeah,
And those are like the main tenets. And most of the training around that kind of just looks like really deep group therapy, where clowns get really comfortable being like seen. So having your emotions, your vulnerabilities be presented in front of other people, and getting to the point where you can hold on to that and feel secure in yourself while still showing these really vulnerable components of yourself.
yeah.
And so I trained a bunch in that, did a lot of practice in that, then ran a theater company, trained people in the theater company in that style of performance, the direct address with the audience, helped. We had a style of creating theater called devised theater, where everybody works together to create the pieces. So I was managing a lot of different personalities, bringing people's ideas in, being clear about like where you do have say, where you don't have say, the whole time, while helping everybody interact with each other on this like deeper grounded level. And I did that until I was about like 30. And then that it was around that time that companies like Google and other tech companies were talking about bringing your full self to work
Hmm.
and wanting more collaboration, more creativity, more like you. And that was what I had been doing both in the clown and in the training, and running that theater company was helping people do that. And then for me the jump to, oh, doing this over here, I've been doing this over here, I can take this and apply those skills to this other world that seems to be yearning for this type of relationality. um yeah, it seemed to me like there was a clear line.
There clear line, yes, as you say that, but to anyone looking for it, they wouldn't look in that direction at all, would they?
No, no.
So that's a really cool discovery. How do you figure that out? How do you make that connection yourself?
I it felt obvious to me, I think, when I heard this like bring your full self, collaboration, creativity, it made sense to me that that was what was happening, and that the work that I had been doing in clown was all, like so deeply rooted in just being able to make authentic connection with people.
And that's from a leadership perspective, getting into the
Mm-hmm.
corporate side of things here today,
Yeah, yeah,
finally
totally. Yeah,
at 30 minutes and 30 minutes in or 45 minutes in.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, that's obviously the one of the first things I noticed about you when we were chatting was you just had this remarkable level of comfort with things that would normally be uncomfortable, and I admire that to this day, but I admired it in the moment, and was, as someone who always struggled with the dichotomy between hiding who you are at work, not bringing your full self, right? Can I bring my full self to work kind of thing? Probably not. and just kind of like the whole suit and tie kind of, this is me as a professional, but in the meantime, like, I'm a completely different human being. That piece was exhausting. And I remember specifically just kind of, my dad got me like the for my birthday or Christmas, he got me like my full name as a URL,
Mm.
like a domain. So he got me martinhauck.ca, and I didn't know what to do with it. I did a bunch of like weird stuff because it was like I wasn't really in the professional world at the time. But then at some point, I had to ask myself, well, I'm a professional now. I have to come across as this thing, or I can't really speak my mind, or I can't really show like my creative weird side because what would professionals think about that, blah blah blah
Mm.
blah. And there's a real sense of privilege to be able to just get comfortable eventually with just being yourself, so to speak. um and so that stood out immediately, but never really put two and two together in terms of why. I just thought like, oh, that's your personality, right? But
Mm.
if you think about it, or if I think about it right now, is like, how much work did you put into intentionally and almost unintentionally getting to a place where you were comfortable with that? So, um, but you make the distinction, you make the connection that that is something important that people in the business world probably need, or how does that come about?
So I it's worth noting that I also struggle with, like, for me when I doing leadership development work feels doesn't feel quite right to me anymore.
Hmm.
And in doing it, that pressure that you're talking about like being a professional, presenting in a certain way, being what people expect, I felt very strongly and would like slip into, and it there's like a real internal tension, like a real like um, sense of imposter syndrome, or like I shouldn't be there in a lot of ways, because like I kind of shouldn't. Like I came from a totally different world, or at least there's that belief or the expectation.
Hmm.
And so I think like the thing, and yeah, this company got me to make a course for them about like balancing authenticity and professionalism in the workplace. And essentially my note was that you don't I don't think it's necessarily safe to bring like your full authentic self into the workplace. And I think that there's a lot to be said for being selective about how you show up, and the parts that you do bring. I don't think that it's really owed to you.
Yeah.
The the parts that I saw being beneficial in a corporate environment, in the more sort of traditional leadership role, was the tools around self-discovery that allowed me to feel more comfortable with somebody else being their own person, and them having their own wants and needs and desires, and trying to think about the world through the lens of your audience, and what your audience needs to feel safe, and what your audience needs to feel secure, and what your audience needs to be able to contribute in a meaningful, surprising way. And that to me is the more important takeaway from the working in clown, way more so than, show up as your authentic self, whatever that might mean.
So that trend that was in tech and in big business was sort of great direction overall, holistically, maybe, but like missing the key point. And your thesis and belief is that it's less about that and more about just giving people the tools to do what?
I think if you're going to tell a bunch of people to bring their full selves to work, you need to have a group of people who know how to handle full selves.
And
And
most people can't.
yeah,
From like the history of how a, a company or an organization operates.
yeah, most people can't. And that was the gap that I saw that was missing. I actually have no interest in trying to help people bring their full selves into work because I don't think it's safe, because the people that are responsible for their livelihoods don't have the capacity to handle a full self, and it's maybe not even the right place to bring it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think I saw what people meant by bring your full self to work was
Mm.
like contribute ideas that might feel scary to put forward. Let us know if there are things that aren't working, like less full self and more just contribute meaningfully in a way that feels real to
Yeah.
you. Um, and the environment that needs to be created to allow people to do that is a delicate thing to create. Like people, you talk about like safe space. It's cool that the language has shifted to like safer space now, because I don't think it's up to individuals to say that they've made a safe space. It's how people feel. I don't think spaces.
The language changed around it, so it's not safe space anymore. It's like safer.
That's yeah, that's what I see.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I guess the internal work that's necessary to be able to create spaces like that where people feel comfortable contributing ideas that might feel scary to them is requires so much like personal work and self-awareness, and um yeah, that stuff's really hard.
Yeah. And it's not something any amount of. That was always sort of my takeaway. And I've been through a bunch of different sort of leadership trainings through a bunch of different organizations. And the thought that I always had, and I'll make this like 4 hours over the course of 4 to 6 hours over the course of 4 to 6 weeks isn't going to make me an expert in balloon animals or card tricks or anything. It's like you have to be a good leader, to be a good business person, to be a good anything takes way more work
Mm-hmm.
than any kind of like leadership strategy development. Like there's good foundational stuff there
Mm.
that, so like if that's your jam in terms of like how content or how that information is conveyed, then you'll get something out of it. And but it, again, sort of like it's like going to a class on like working out. And at some point you're going to have to lift the weights yourself to get into
Mm-hmm.
shape.
Yeah.
You can watch other people do exercises on YouTube all day long. It's not going to do anything to the midsection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that's always, the whole time I'd been doing that work, is a huge struggle, because people or orgs want something that's like productized, easy, doesn't take their people away from the work for too long.
Yeah. It's
You
a
know,
conflicting. Yeah, it's looking like it's like yes, we want this, but what's the least amount of time we can dedicate to getting it?
totally. And I'm like, where I thought the work would be like incredibly satisfying, it sort of becomes incredibly dissatisfying because of the practical implications. Like I understand you have a business to run. These are incredibly busy people. To take them away for 6 months and to have somebody by their side, like helping them, answering questions, helping guide them, that's a huge investment. And would it be beneficial? Yeah. Would you see big results? yes, and I don't I don't know. Like I think it's a hard thing to convince an organization to do, and I don't even know that it would make sense.
So, at what point does weird is normal, weird is normal, weird is normal come about?
Damn it. Um,
We're up to like 20, $30 here by now.
I know.
Thanks,
Man.
Canadian banking fees.
Yeah. Almost a coffee and a sandwich at this point.
Not in
um,
Yorkville. No.
my yeah, so I guess when I saw this like kind of need in the market, I didn't really know anything that was going on, so I tried to get some work with some like other leadership development companies or team building companies or whatever, and got a bit of work with them and saw what they were doing, and I was like, I do not want to be doing this. Got a job with one person who eventually let me like come up with my own program for a half day facilitation thing. I did it. I noticed the audience's response because I was like fine tuned to pay attention to an audience's response. And I was like, oh, they really like this.
They like it.
Yeah. And
They really like me.
from there, I was like, I'll go off on I'm going to go off on my own because I want to choose how I do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, from there, my friend and I had a phrase growing up where it was, everything is weird until it becomes normal. And that was where it was. That was where weird is normal was born from.
I remember that with cell phones, like Palm Pilots, where it's like people on the bus would just stare out the window or read a book. And I was the guy with the phone, and I was like punching out emails on my BlackBerry or whatever before. I mean, like I'm an early technology adopter, and it's like my ex-wife at the time was just like, "You're so like, why do you have to have like, why are you attached to this thing all the time?"
Mm.
And so, and don't get me wrong, I don't like that I was at the time, and I don't like that I am still to this day. It's gotten worse, if anything. But that was weird at the time.
Right.
And now it is 100% like, it's weird not to be on your phone, unfortunately.
Totally.
So it'd be nice to see that thing come full circle.
Right. Yeah.
Just for the benefit of our mental health and just society and civilization as a whole. But no, it's a really cool. So you you choose this as the company name.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm gonna build out my training my way. You come to a moment where you realize, it's like going up against this immovable problem, and a problem that you don't necessarily want to fix. And so now you're looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Now I'm going back to my roots. Like
Quebec?
now because pardon me.
Going back to Quebec.
Going back, I do. I am in Quebec. Yeah. Yeah. I'm yeah, in a tiny little village in Quebec. It was funny when you were talking about like the butchering animals thing.
Yeah.
There are 3 deer being butchered in the backyard right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm cool with that. I would, but just not. Yeah, not under those
Not in
circumstances.
that. No, not a half a bar
It was
down.
weird. It was weird classical music too. So it felt like,
No, that's so murder scene.
yeah, it was so off-putting.
Yeah. That sounds
We
terrible.
digress. So
We do.
so you're
Yeah, so through I've sort of been grappling with this. The industry, it's also like everyone in the world is a leadership coach now, and I'm just like meh, meh, meh. And I think I can bring like far more value in a more clear way by
Hmm.
helping people with public speaking and with presentation skills,
Yeah.
where those things people have agency and control over, where how well you can lead within an organization, there's so many like external factors that are playing in. It's such a complex system where it was just too hard for me to see tangible results, and I love a tangible result.
Michaud loves the tangible. What does that mean?
Like to see, so if somebody's working on a talk and we work together, within 45 minutes I can see a massive change
Hmm.
between where they started and where they are now. And there's changes in ideas that we can work through in that moment, that person can then take and apply to whatever it is that whatever other talks that they're doing. Like they're tangible skills that I get selfishly. I get the reward of seeing them go through that development. Like, before, when you gave this talk, you didn't pause at all, and I couldn't understand a damn thing you were saying because you just talked and talked and talked and talked, and it was very hard to listen to.
Hmm.
Now, half an hour later, you're doing the same thing, but where there's punctuation, you're taking a Mississippi, and just that like subtle change is, to me, so satisfying to be able to see the benefit and to see this person who before went through all this work to put together this talk, but that then nobody could really kind of listen to because it was just a wall of words.
Yeah. Could be very smart words put
Could be
together.
so smart. Yeah. Amazing things that nobody's ever going to hear because of the way that it's being delivered.
Could you critique me right now selfishly?
Sure.
Coach me? Just like a micro dose of coaching, not a half
Yeah.
chocolate bar of coaching.
Yeah, a single square
Single
of
square,
coaching.
yeah.
Yeah, do you have like a talk that you're working on?
No, just even just conversationally, I suppose, or I don't have a talk necessarily, but just even like on podcasts and whatnot, back and forth banter. I'll give you one thing that I feel self-conscious about
Mhm.
is the ums, ahs, and likes and ands filler words,
Yeah.
as well as me actually getting to the point of a question and rambling somewhat like I'm doing right now. Like I could just be really brief. I find the self criticism that I have, I could just say one particular thing and ask the question and be really succinct and not do any like weird tangential stories to get to the point, even though I kind of like doing that stuff. So I guess I'd be curious to get your take on that and just general live fire
Uh,
exercise.
Tell me what you just told me in 25% of the time.
I'd love for you to critique my podcast style.
Great. Um so far I think that you're quite good at picking up on threads, at following a line, doing a callback. The tone that you take is quite grounded and curious, and for me that makes me feel like you want to hear what I have to say, and you're in a place where you can hear it and hold that. Like sometimes in an attempt to be interesting, people can say too much or take on
Mm-hmm.
a really high energy tone, and for me that feels unapproachable, where with what you're doing, it feels approachable and welcoming and warm.
So I don't do that.
You don't do that. No, you're like quite grounded.
These are all very nice things to say. I asked you for criticism, my dear sir.
I think that getting people to do more of what's working is often better than getting them to do less of what isn't.
Okay, yeah. Like double down
Um,
on your strengths versus work on your weaknesses kind of deal.
yeah. Um, and I guess to your point, like people get so fucking caught up on these ums and ahs filler word things.
I've seen quite a few TikTok videos on there. I'm like, there's what's his name? Vin?
Yeah. Guy loves telling you to not use filler words, but when he talks, I don't trust him.
Because there's no filler words?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels weird.
It's intimidating, right?
And,
There's a
and
certain
like,
level of academic, like, oh, I gotta level up my wordsmithing with this person.
yeah, and they come across as unapproachable, and for me, it comes across as unapproachable
Hmm.
and unwelcoming. And I quite like when people use ums and ahs and look away and pause for a long time. I think that those things help to really humanize and make a message easier to hear. There's a too far limit, but that too far limit to me sits more on the line of there's no rhythm to what you're saying, more so than the ums, ahs, and filler words being the problem. And what I mean by that is when
Yeah.
people use and ah and like, and then they're just constantly talking. There's always something coming out of their mouth, and there's no variation in the rhythm because there's no chance for a pause or a silence or a speeding up or a slowing down because they're always going like this and talking really fast, and it's hard to tell what's going on. And even when they are trying to like and come up with a new idea, it still comes out as like a wall
Yeah.
where I feel as long as you're changing your pace, sometimes you talk a little bit faster, but then you can slow down.
By the way.
Adding in some silence so that people can hear what you're saying and process it,
Yeah.
especially after a big point, and playing a little bit with like, okay, now I'm really excited, but now this is something serious,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I want you to hear it.
You
But
do a
if I'm
fantastic job with that, by the
always
way.
thank you. But if I'm always talking like this, it's gonna be boring.
I'm going
You'll
to
come
worry
in,
about you.
you're gonna worry about me. You're gonna come to expect what's happening next,
Yeah.
right? It's like, yeah. I think about the voice in music, and there's this phrase that like the best pop songs in the world you can sing along to before the song is over.
Okay. It's catchy.
It's catchy. There's a rhythm, an expectation, a pattern that's set up that you expect, and then you can jump on, and then you're satisfied by it. But it's not like it's repetitive, but it's not consistently repetitive.
Eh,
Like,
like where my mind went to the I don't know why, but like dun 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 that song. But like, how do you talk like that and then not have that rhythm continue?
it's the same way how songs go through like a chorus, a bridge, a verse. That song doesn't go da 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 dum for 5 minutes. It goes
Okay, that's
right.
fair.
See, like it changes and then goes back into that. Oh, here's that thing that I remember. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yes. Yay. Yay.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's like, oh, something different's happening. Oh, it's happening here. Oh,
And
this is
this,
neat. Oh, and here's that thing again. Okay.
yeah. So I'm going to pull this back into corporal world again for a little bit. How can people ops folks leverage? They do presentations, and oftentimes I'm answering the question, so that's a bad idea. How can people in the people ops space sort of leverage an improvement on the way they present things?
If the biggest and easiest thing that people can do is pause more.
And that's uncomfortable. Like silence is your friend.
Silence is uncomfortable for the speaker and so welcome for the audience.
Yes, it is. Yeah, 100%. That's
100%.
what's really refreshing about your videos, and even just having a conversation with you, right? I'm nervous now. I feel like filling it. And I did, technically.
I mean, you sold yourself out when you went into the pause with your face. I don't know if people are going to see the faces or not here.
They
But
will, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there was like, and those things are natural. You're trying to soothe yourself as something that's as something uncomfortable is happening. In you know, it feels weird at first, but when you do it more, it starts to feel normal.
That one's gonna cost $350, folks. That's a wire transfer. That's not even e-transfer.
Just give me your direct deposit information.
By the way, just for the folks listening, like there is no actual, like, yes, I really, really want you to e-transfer me at least 3 times just for the sake of it, but no, this is not a paid.
Oh yeah. I was like, imagine people actually think that.
This podcast brought to you by Mustard Yellow Disrupt HR Hat.
It's HR mustard yellow version.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that people can do to make a direct, immediate, easy to do change is to really just pause after they say something that's important. And to count in your head 1 Mississippi. Because you have to count them in your head. Because otherwise you make a pause and you think you've waited an eternity and it's been a quarter second.
Yeah. I have a question for you that is speaking adjacent.
Okay.
Which is when you say 1 Mississippi in your mind, do you hear 1 Mississippi? Like in the same way that if you had headphones on and you pressed a play button on your MP3 player that only had a recording of you saying 1 Mississippi, do you hear it as in the same way?
I don't hear it anymore. Like, I went through this process and now I'm on the other side. And now
You don't need to do that anymore.
no, now I go off of like what feels like an internal metronome.
Because it's a muscle.
Because it's a muscle that you grow and you build. And so I'm trying to like stay in rhythm whether or not I'm hitting like whole notes or hitting something like staccato and I'm trying to go back and forth in between this thing and then slow down. But I'm through practice, it feels like there's like a metronome or like a timing bar within me that feels more situated. When I was learning, it would be, and I practiced this so much just to like be clear. It's not a natural, it wasn't a natural thing for me either. But I would count, and I would say, yeah, in my head, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and then keep going.
Now it's a part of that. It's just there. It's your normal cadence.
It's my normal cadence. Yeah.
That's helpful, but I was being hyper specific and I'll give you the selfish reason. The selfish reason. I'm obsessed with aphantasia and how the mind perceives things. And aphantasia is the absence of a person's visual ability to visualize, essentially. And there's a subsection of that that's relating to sort of inner monologue. And so when people hear this voice in their head, or you can hear a person's voice, or you can hear a song in your mind, or anything, the 1 Mississippi specifically, I was genuinely asking, like, do you actually hear it, or is it just that you're saying it in your mind? Like, can you hear it as if it's a real sound?
Oh, no, I would hear it in the way that, like, if I'm reading, the way that I sort of hear those words.
So you hear the words when you read. This is my question. This is a sidebar. This is a definite sidebar because I'm just curious about it.
Hearing.
Because the assumption, I'll preface this with the assumption that if you didn't know about aphantasia, or you didn't know, it's just some people have the ability to visualize. So they close their eyes and I say, imagine a red apple. And some people genuinely see a red apple, and then some people see nothing, and some people see a fuzzy red circle with maybe like a green blob that represents a leaf. And then other people see like a 4K, 8K version of an apple. It's crystal clear, and you would call that something like a photographic memory kind of deal. But the same thing applies to sounds. And so when you're reading a book and you're reading a character's voice, or like an actual thing, do you hear that person's voice in your mind as if you were listening to something on headphones
versus
something else?
Well, I guess maybe I think I hear it like I would if I was
interesting
with someone on headphones. I guess because I don't know what the other.
You don't know what you don't know, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't hear anything, period, in my head.
Nothing.
Nada.
Okay.
I feel like I'm baked in Zen to a certain degree. Like I've tried meditating.
Yeah.
But I feel like my baseline is like I don't have visuals distracting me from anything. And then I don't have like voices I have thoughts. And it's interesting to distinguish the difference between thoughts and sort of like a voice. Like if I think about your voice 4 hours after this podcast, 4 minutes after this podcast, I can't hear your voice, and I don't even know how I would describe your voice to another person. And I couldn't even compare your voice in my mind against someone else's voice and have two different voices in my mind. Nor do I hear a song back either. Like when I get a song, I can get songs stuck in my head, and I might have the inclination to hum it, but I don't have that. And so that goes hand in hand with like aphantasia. I forget what it is for the audio side of things. Was just randomly reminded of that. So you have it
where I could like hear something in my head.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Different from a thought.
How about the visualization?
Visualization I for sure have. Like I rock climb a lot, and part of part of doing it is I have to memorize like sequences of moves to be
Mhm.
able to like send, like to do the thing from the bottom to the top without falling. And I can see very clearly the hold I'm going to, the angle it is, and really play out an entire sequence up a hole.
It's a whole toolkit you have at your disposal.
Yeah.
You close your eyes and you can think of a particular wall or a particular
Mm-hmm.
face of mountain,
Mm-hmm.
and it's there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wild.
I think it helps me too with like trying to memorize bits of speeches too.
Like the like the memory palace. You're familiar with that?
Oh no.
So you create a museum, so to speak, in your mind.
Uh-huh.
And this doesn't work very well for
Oh.
me.
There's certain places that you go where certain things live.
You walk through your house, but you associate, okay, well, I put my keys on this nightstand every day. And so the keys are going to represent the 5 key pillars of becoming normal, whatever. I don't
Mm.
know. And so it gives you the ability to sort of like plant symbolic representations of things you'd like to remember. So to memorize, instead of memorizing word for word and sounding incredibly robotic, you're just like, I need to remember to talk about the 5 keys
Right.
of becoming normal. And so, and then you go to another area in your memory palace, so to speak, and like the world's memory champions, like people that memorize the number pi or whatever,
Yeah.
for as long as possible. Um, Hundreds, if not thousands of digits. They have like a memory palace that they walk through with like sequences of numbers, and like a fighter jet will represent this pattern of
Mm.
like 6 or 7 numbers or whatever. And then they move on. Okay, after the fighter jet, it's the lampshade, and the lampshade represents these numbers, this sequence of numbers because of
Mm.
XYZ that's specific to them. But
Hmm.
so that's a way of remembering things. It's complicated, but it like being able to use that. I don't think you need that visually, because I could do that in theory, because I could walk through my home and associate things to things that are always there. Like when I walk past the dining room and I get to the kitchen, whatever. So I don't need a visual memory for that to work. It just works better if you do have it.
Mm. I'll try that.
Fun facts.
It's very fun facts. Yeah.
Back
I
to
think you paused well.
hmm?
Just just for the record. I think you paused well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't. My pauses come from the fact that I don't know what I'm going to say next, genuinely. So then I'm like, huh. That's where the. That's where the. I'm looking for the word right now, specifically. But that's where they come from, as opposed to intentional. I'm going to pause so you can process. My pauses are coming from like me scrambling around my mind, like, I need a collection of words to say next.
Yeah, you still, a lot of people when they're trying to think of what to say next will just keep talking and talking and talking until they stumble upon it. Like
Oh, okay.
still having that ability to wait, formulate a thought, deliver a thought is
One thing that challenges folks often is the ability to have a convincing argument or proposal for people in upper management. There's an imbalance of power in the conversation. I'm in HR and I got to tell the executive team that they're destroying the culture at the organization. And I'm emotional. I have emotional data points on it, and I have actual data points on it. What would you suggest a person change about their approach if they have that message to share?
try to understand the lens of your audience. So while you, HR person, might care that the culture is being destroyed, senior leadership, sales exec person might not care.
Why are you picking on sales, man? Sales
Or
never does that. They don't think that way.
um, love salespeople. Difficult job. Tons of respect. But they're seeing everything through a different lens, right? Like they're seeing things through a revenue lens. So then how can you present the culture being shit through the lens of how that impacts revenue? So is it that some of the actual data that you have is your salespeople go out, they're pulling in leads, but then when those leads come in and they're going through a demo process, the person doing the demo isn't able to do a good job because there's something about the culture that's preventing them from doing it. How does the point that you're trying to make relate to the person that you're telling it to? And then frame whatever you're saying through the lens of what matters to them.
Is it best to frame it from a place of negativity, like highlighting the pain point first, or is that kind of a path towards just a particular culture of communication, or a practice of communicating in a certain way, as opposed to there's that you could paint it in a more utopian kind of view, like this is the ideal state that we want to get to, we should aspire to do this, that versus like using fear almost as a driving motivator alongside data. What's your take on that?
We're, as humans, way more likely to avoid pain than move toward pleasure.
Way more likely. Okay.
So I'm more likely to take an action that prevents me from, say, like losing 5 cents or $5 or whatever.
10 cents. You
At
said
10
10
cents.
cents. Come on, why are you trying to shortchange me now?
Literal shortchanging. Way more likely to do something that reduces a risk than to do something that could potentially yield 20 cents.
Interesting. So,
Generally speaking,
illustrate your points from a place of this is, if we don't do X, Y, and Z based on the data that we have, then you paint a very colorful picture of worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make a person seem like a doomsday
I don't think
prophet?
so, especially if it's real, right? Like, why would, if things right now seem fine, why would I change something to make it potentially better?
Yeah.
When I have a million other priorities that I'm dealing with, like my priorities, typically people's priorities, are to maintain the status quo or to put out fires, often with like a hope of making things better, typically.
The hope of maintain status quo, do what you can to make things better, but there will also be fires, so you got to put those out.
Yeah, and most often people spend their time on the like making sure that things don't get worse, maintaining status quo, and putting out fires. And if you look at the way that people prioritize their work days, it's often very little that's put toward the things that are going to make things better long term.
Interesting. That was a call from my daughter's school. So I got to take this. Give me 1 second.
Take it. Yeah.
Hello. Sorry about that.
No problem. How is everything?
I gotta go.
Okay.
Um, how do we wrap this up in 1 minute and then make sure we can connect again? Because I had a blast.
Yeah, I also had a blast, and we're coming up on the 2 hour mark,
Yeah,
aren't we?
yeah,
I feel like we're just getting started.
yeah. Um, well, you're doing this new thing. Your
Yep.
pivot. Insert
Pivot.
Ross Geller gif here. Um, how do people, if people are vibing with what you're putting down, how do people get in touch?
Find me on LinkedIn.
Classic old
Um,
LinkedIn, not in.
classic LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, weirdasnormal.com. I haven't updated it. It's still leadership development stuff, but all the contact information's still there. And
But people should be reaching out to you for what?
public speaking. So like if you're somebody that has to give a talk and you want some coaching and you want to work on some components or just generally get better at how you present ideas and how comfortable you feel in front of groups of people, message me. If there are people on your team that could benefit from going through a structured 6-week program, I have that.
Basically,
And
any leader that has to present
any
things to a team.
any leader, I'm pricing it in a way that would work for people's PD budgets. I know that with the leadership development work, it's a whole rigmarole to push everything through, and so I'm modeling this in a way that's easier for HR people to present it to their team and see if they want to just enroll with their own PD budgets to remove some of that hassle.
For the unanointed, PD is personal development, not peanut butter disaster.
not not to be confused with the
Don't
very
confuse it.
popular peanut butter disaster, the reason Kong was invented.
Always a pleasure chatting with you, Michaud.
Yeah, likewise.
Hopefully, this is the first of many. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
No, likewise.
Yeah. Okay.
For those of you still listening, my name is Martin, and I run a little thing called the People Group. Got 5,000 members of HR, recruitment, and operations folks. And Michaud is in that community, so you can message him there as well if you like. It's Michaud. And on top of that, I just want everybody's emails to be read and all your candidates to be awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.